Hello, and welcome back to Long Shot Ballerinas, a podcast for adults pursuing excellence in ballet. If you are new here and you're just listening in for the first time, welcome. My name is Sasha. Please feel free to go back and listen to the previous 7 episodes. This is episode 8, and it's going to be 2 parts, with the second part coming out shortly after you hear this first one. In the background, you might hear my parrot Spitfire. He likes to chirp and chime in once in a while, so please excuse him. But otherwise, today's episode is going to be kind of like a story time, for lack of a better word. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my ballet history. So the first part we're going to cover probably through the end of my undergraduate years, going into graduate school. There's drama, there's mystery, there's a lot of tears, a lot of hope. So I hope you enjoy a little history lesson on myself. Before we get started, just to remind you, if you haven't already, please follow me over on Instagram at The Long Shot Ballerina. I post pretty frequently, and I just kind of like kept keeping up with you guys and talking about everything ballet. And I also do a lot of sewing ballet costumes, so you'll be able to see some costume content as well. It's quite a variety, and I just have fun getting to know everybody in our adult ballet community. So please check out again my handle at The Long Shot Ballerina. Now, please grab your beverage of choice or turn that sound up in the car, and let's get going. Okay, so a little bit about this podcast. My history is, I've been coming to terms with my ballet history for many years, and I didn't start ballet at the age of 3, like most people. I started what some would consider late. I really didn't get into regular training until I was about 11 years old. I think my mom had sent me to a couple of different studios when I was growing up, kind of on and off, but we moved around a lot. I was born in Texas, and then we moved to Washington State when I was about 6 years old. So I didn't really come by it like some people do, where you're in it since before you were born. And I know that I used to love to dance around my house and listen to like kind of old Disney songs. My mom had lots of cassette tapes and CDs, and my family's very musical. My dad is a musician. And so that, I think dance was just like naturally a part of me. The other thing is that when we moved to what I consider my hometown in Washington State, my mom gave me the choice to be homeschooled if I wanted to. I think I had been to quite a few schools, even though I was so young. And at this point, I was turning 9. And so, I decided to be homeschooled and stay home with my little brother too. He's 6 years younger than I am, and I'm 34. At the time, she kept us both home. And I think she really wanted to concentrate on keeping us well socialized, so we would be prepared for eventually attending school years should we decide to, and of course, eventually college. They wanted us to go have a college education. So this was one of the attempts that she made, very successful attempts that she made at integrating us into our little community, small town. We did choir, we played instruments. I think I got sent to a piano lesson or 2. I didn't really like piano lessons very much, but I played music at home. And ballet was kind of something she was into as a younger person. She actually performed in the Houston Ballet as a background person in Romeo and Juliet. So she got to wear a costume. They sometimes employ people who are kind of normal people to just fill in parts. So she had some experience, and so she sent me to our little local studio when I was, I think I was 11, or I was turning 11. And I started out as a summer session. So it was only like 5 or 6 of us girls in this little town. And the studio at the time was run by this woman who was English, and she used to dance with the Ballet Russe. So she had some pretty serious training, and she was quite strict. And I remember being really scared of her. She's absolutely wonderful, Miss Christine. I know she's probably never going to hear this, but even though I was afraid of her, she really instilled in us some really amazing habits. And then she also had a younger woman who was in her 20s that was teaching as well. And so I started my first performance. I'm going to try and put up some clips of that over on the Instagram, so keep an eye out for those because it's fun. My dad recently found some old home movies and is putting them on the internet and trying to get everything digitized for us. So I got to see myself as like my first dance performance ever. It was just a little studio, like in the studio performance in our practice room. But I was wearing a little pink tutu with lace. And anyways, it was cool. It was really cool to kind of have memories brought up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally remember that. like vividly. So very cool. But that was the summer of, that was the year 2000. So yeah, I was, oh no, I'm sorry, the summer of 2001, whatever, it doesn't matter. I think I was 10 turning 11. And then, yeah, I don't remember falling in love with ballet. I think my little brain loved it. I think now that I think of myself as like I was a neurodivergent kid, that really appealed to me. And especially since I do have some autism in here, I think I really loved the rules and being able to just be quiet. I didn't have to talk. I was a pretty shy kid. So you just did your work. You did what the teacher said. And, if you put the corrections in and you did the work, then you got a cool outcome and probably a compliment. I was very much a people-pleasing child. I'm still trying to get over that. But yeah, so I don't have a really strong memory. Some people kind of like know that they love ballet, but it wasn't really clear to me in that like, aha type of a way. I do have one memory of my third grade class. This was the last year in public school I did until high school. We did go and see the Pacific Northwest Ballet Maurice Sendak Nutcracker that they used to do, Kent Stoll's Nutcracker. Now I believe P&B does the Balanchine version, but at the time they were still doing the Sendak. And I do remember getting all dressed up. It was like a Nutcracker tea, and then we all piled on a fancy bus and we drove over to Seattle. We lived on the west side of the state, so nearer than where I ended up growing up. And I do vividly recall standing over the orchestra pit during intermission. And I remember the party scene a little bit, but we got to walk down there because we had floor seats and orchestra seats. And so kind of like seeing them in their tuxedos and fancy dresses. And then the one performance of like variations that sticks out to me is the Arabian, or they were using it was a peacock. It was a woman in this fabulous like beautiful tailed costume with lots of fabric pieces and colorful, blue and purple and just magnificent. And she would be carried out, I think, in a cage, and then the attendants would unlock the bird cage and she would, perform the variation to the Arabian divertissement. And those are the two memories I have of that. So I think the seeds were planted at that point, but I hadn't really considered it. My life became kind of shaken up with a move and everything. And so moving on, I, continued my training. Eventually, the younger woman who was teaching there took over the studio and bought the studio. She became my main dance teacher. And at the age of 13, I went to get fitted for my first pair of pointe shoes. So exciting. They were Block Supremas. I'll never forget the feeling. One of my online friends now, Veronica Vicor, if you don't follow her on Instagram, you should. But she recently got her pointe shoes and I watched her little vlog of it and I was just like tearing up because I remember the exact same feeling. It's the same feeling. It doesn't matter how old you are when you get them, but it's magical and it's easier than you expect somehow. It seems like, oh, this is going to be so painful or, oh, this is going to be so, uncomfortable, but it feels so natural. I think when you're ready for them, it's like your body is just ready to go on point. Your feet expect it at that point, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. And so I started my pointe training. So that would have been, I think I turned 13 right around the same time. So that was like fall time. And then shortly, I guess after that, I auditioned for a summer program at Pacific Northwest Ballet. My teachers had kind of taken my parents aside and said, okay, she has some potential. She has the right proportions. Her feet are really bendy. I did have really nice feet as a child already. So, and I was pretty thin, or not thin, but just like kind of lanky. It looked like I was going to be tall. I was really starting to sprout up at that time. And so they recommended that I get some different training. So my parents drove me over there. And I think at the time, that was the first year, this was 2003, that the Francia Russell Center in Bellevue, Washington opened up. So Francia Russell and Kent Stoll found it. Did they found the Pacific Northwest Ballet? I think they did. So they opened up a secondary location. So I was enrolled in a summer session there. And it was my first time kind of doing a really intensive week-long thing. And my parents drove me over every day. I think, like I said, my dad was commuting. So I think it sort of worked out. We would just kind of carpool. And so the classes we had jazz, we had character dancing, which I'd only taken a little bit of. I'm sure there was modern. I don't recall. I want to say we had pre-pointe, but I don't think they had pointe courses because not all of the girls were on pointe at that at that moment. I want to say our group was like ages 11 to 13 or something. It was a combination group. So I was a little bit on the older side in my group. I was also on the taller side. I've been 5'8" since probably very nearing this summer session. I think by the time I was 14, I was fully grown in my height. And so the character class that I had to take, this instructor, he was Bulgarian and probably like 6'2", 6'3", big guy, all muscles. Just, I had never seen somebody like this in my life. And he was loud. And so he had just this incredibly bombastic and vibrant personality. And I was just absolutely terrified to put it mildly, honestly. And I remember the first day we had characters. The studios, there's a big hallway, and then the studios are tall with big glass doors that you come into. And so we had all gone into the classroom, and we had our character shoes and our character skirts. And this is a formative memory for me in my dance life, so this is why this is important. And so, we took our places at the bar that we wanted, and we waited. And the pianist was in the room, and I remember him walking through the door and being impressed by his size, just like, whoa, this person is just larger than life. And instantly he starts clapping and shouting, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think we got the idea that we needed to leave the room. So we all kind of hurried out in the hallway, and he's talking to us, and he has us line up by height outside of the studio in a line out of the studio door. So we're in the hallway of the building. And of course, little old me is not so little. And so I'm the tallest, so I get to go in the front of the line. Keep in mind, this is my meek little personality, and I'm just like, I'm sure my eyes are wide, and I'm probably trying not to cry, and it's just a lot for me at this point. So finally we get the idea that he's asking us to literally march into the classroom. So I don't remember how we held our arms, maybe at our hips or something, but we were to march in the door, turn right, go down one side of the bars, turn left, go up the back side of the room, the bar, and then turn left again until we were all evenly placed on the three sides of the room that had the bars. And then, of course, the mirror side is the fourth. And I think we did that probably total 3 times, because the first 2 somebody messed up, but we were to march exactly together. We were to march and turn sharply at every corner, you name it. So we spent probably 15 minutes of the first class just trying to enter the room properly. And like I said, I had never experienced anything like this. And I knew a little bit of character dance because my teacher at the time, kind of would, we learned a little bit for our shows that we would do. And yeah, but it was just like, wow. And I remember he would say in a big voice, he would say, "Okay, ladies, E," and then he would point to the pianist and say E, like and, right? To signal her to go. And wow, that was just like, I have never forgotten him. His name is Mr. Iliev. Yeah, that's the biggest memory I have from that summer session. That's it. That and Patricia Barker, she came in and taught a class for us, and she was my idol, a wonderful principal dancer forever at Pacific Northwest Ballet. She had just this, she was incredible feet, incredible lines. She was kind of just the fan favorite, and she danced for a long time on their stage because of that, because people just loved to come and see her perform. So she came and taught our classes. She was a terrible teacher. She was mean. She didn't explain herself. That was my first experience meeting an idol in person and being disappointed. But regardless, it was magical. Yeah. Summer session, went home. And then from there, I continued on. We would do usually a June performance, which was like a variety. Every class level would have a performance, a piece or 2 we would do in our local theater that was at the middle school. And then every other year we would do Nutcracker. And on the non-Nutcracker years, we would do a fall or a winter storybook ballet. So we did Giselle, we did Coppelia. I think after the drama, I think they did Swan Lake, and just something, for us to work on. A full-length ballet. And that was something that I don't think prior to this particular instructor taking over the studio had been done in my little town before. So it was kind of a big deal. And we always had sold-out shows. Everybody would come and see it because it was like, oh, there's ballet and there's culture in Ellensburg, Washington. There's actually a ton of culture there. But anyways, ballet was fairly new. So we can fast forward to, I think I was 15 when I went to go audition again for the main summer intensive over at the main school at Pacific Northwest Ballet School, which is in Seattle downtown by the Science Center. And this is where the cracks kind of started to form. If you listen to the previous podcast where I talked about like my breast reduction, I was kind of dealing with those feelings at the time of just like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I had these boobs. There was a lot going on. I was dealing with issues with my turnout, finding out that I realized I didn't think I had very much available to me. There were a lot of things colliding in my teenage brain. I had just gone back to public school. I started my freshman year of high school at our public school, deciding that was maybe good for me to make friends. And I had friends in the town, and they wanted me to be in school. I had a lot of dance friends and musical theater friends. But anyways, that was another very formative memory for me and some good life lessons. The things I remember from that experience were that was my first audition that was like numbered. I don't think the other one that I had, it was so small and it was kind of like if you signed up, you got in. It wasn't really a cut audition, that one I did when I was 13. But this one was a real one. It was for like the level where you go, and you get pre-professional training. And looking back on it, I was definitely not technically prepared. I just wasn't. I didn't have the training. I didn't know to push myself. My parents were really wonderful and just kind of let us pursue what we wanted, but they were not very much like, okay, you're going to improve. Okay, we have goals. Like I wasn't raised that way, which I'm very grateful for actually. But yeah, I was not technically or emotionally prepared for this experience. So I remember getting a number. I remember wearing a black long sleeve leotard because that's the one that I had. And I remember that my point shoes, so it was a point audition. The whole class was on point. And while I guess my point work, I was comfortable in my shoes. At the time, I was wearing Gaynor Minden, like the very first. They only had one kind that you could buy. But unfortunately, a trend at my studio at the time, because a lot of my friends did not have these super archy feet like I did, was to wear your point shoes with just elastics and not ribbons. I don't know why this was a trend. I'm not sure where it came from, but I wanted to be cool like them. So I used to take the ribbons on my shoes and just tuck them underneath my foot, like inside my shoe under my arch to hide them because I wanted to be cool. Like our top dancer, that was her thing that she did. And I wanted to be like her. And she was like tiny and petite and actually like quite like muscular. Like she was pretty stocky, but she was like small and she always got the fast rolls and she was always the leading role and whatever. And so I looked up to her. And when I get to my P&B audition, my point shoes and the ribbons are completely just like tattered. They're just completely messed up from being in my shoes. And it was the only pair I had. And so because I thought they looked so terrible, I almost couldn't tie them around my ankle. They were like so messed up. So I decided to just tuck them underneath my shoes. So I feel like that was strike number one. Strike number two is, of course, one of the famous exercises they have you do right away in front of everything is you're at bar and you do a grand plie in second to see what your turnout looks like. My turnout is really bad. And it was really bad then because I really didn't have instruction on how to even maximize what I could. But just doing a grand plie, unless I'm really focusing, it looks terrible. So there's, strike number two. Strike number three is I had boobs. I had boobs. I don't think they were super enormous at that point, but yeah, I other than all of the I had the long legs, I had the good feet, but I really didn't have the whole thing. And my technique was sloppy. I do remember being proud of myself for doing a double pirouette in a combination where they had asked us to, and I wasn't sure that I could, and I tried. And I was like, I'm going to do it anyways. Like, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it. So I do remember a little bit of pride at that, but so needless to say, a week goes by, I get my letter in the mail and it's rejection. And I remember being pretty devastated. And at that point, deciding that I was kind of done with dance. However, since that was summertime, that would have been 2000. Yeah, was I 15? Yes, that would have been 2005. And that fall, we were hitting a Nutcracker year at my home studio. So I wasn't quitting dance, but it was definitely made me not want to try to go audition again. Instead of like, oh, let me get better. And I wasn't a kid that had that type of natural competitiveness. So yeah, I do remember writing it off in my head like, okay, well, they don't like me. So that's the end of that. Fast forward to the fall. We do Nutcracker. I ended up being the assistant artistic director. I got to choreograph and coach the Polichinelles, which was very exciting. That's Mother Ginger. If sometimes some studios call it different things, bonbons. Actually, I think ours were bonbons. Whatever, Polichinelles. So I got to coach them. I was assisting. I was very excited about that. So Nutcracker goes off pretty well. I ended up doing in that show. I was a snowflake, a flower soloist, like a demi-flower. And then our angels were both kids, and we had like 3 big angels. It was little angels and big angels. And the big angels got to partner with, we had a jester as well. So the jester did some partnering. So I got to do a really cool lift called helicopter lift. Yeah, it was really exciting. That was probably like the most advanced that I had been ever, like to that point. So I loved Nutcracker. It's my favorite time of year. Had a good time. Okay. Fast forward again, a few months later, probably sometime early spring, I was at school and my parents would come pick me up and then take me down the block, mile away to the dance studio after school. And unbeknownst to me during Nutcracker times, and I guess just I was kind of a clueless kid. It's because I was homeschooled and because I'm autistic, I just didn't pick up on sort of like the subtle, I didn't know what was happening at the time, but there was some drama unfolding that was really serious, like really, really like legally serious. So my little innocent self, at this point, I'd never been kissed. I was homeschooled. I was pretty sheltered, not necessarily on purpose, but it's how I was. And so I didn't know what was coming for me that day. But like I said, my parents picked me up from school. We're on the drive over to dance. And then we passed the dance studio. And I was like, you guys missed the turn. And they were quiet. I think I was the only one in the car. Maybe my brother was with them. But, and I was like, what's going on? And they're like, you're not going to dance today. And I was like, what? What did I do? Like thinking I was being punished or something. And they're like, you're not going back to dance there ever. And, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I freaked out. I'm pretty sure I was like, oh my, like what's happening? What's happening? And I wasn't a swearer then, but I know in my head I was probably thinking, what the fuck? And so, yeah, all of that's kind of a blur. It's a huge blur. We were halfway through rehearsing for our spring performance. I think I had some kind of solo. I'm not sure, but I was like the top of my level. I wasn't in the top level, but I had been like kind of held back because of my technique being, I was pretty hypermobile in some areas and just needed, so I was kind of doing the solo stuff in my year. And yeah, so apparently what had happened, unbeknownst to me, and trigger warning, this is like going to talk about like, I'm going to hint at some like essay type stuff. But apparently the director and teacher of my school had been involved with a student. And the other girl I told you about that I looked up to was kind of like the best one. She had reported it to some parents because she saw it happen or something, saw them kissing in a studio. I don't know. But, literally we're like 15 and 16 at the time. She's in her 20s. It was a whole big thing. And so I kind of got pieces of this. My parents really never like told me, at least I don't recall. Maybe they did, but, so all this stuff starts coming out. And like a lot of dramatic happenings, some people believe the victim and some people believe the accuser or the perpetrator. And my parents were of the camp that, of course, like this is a child. This sounds like grooming to us. I didn't know what all these things meant at the time, but so rightfully, and plus at that time, remember I told you that I had been like the assistant director and whatever. I had also been teaching at the school. I began my teaching career when I was like 13 or 14, and my teacher would let me, because we were a little, my parents wanted to give me lessons, but it became expensive. And so she would let us trade lessons for me teaching some of the younger kids, which was really cool. So I had been developing my choreography skills, all of that. So rightfully, they felt really close to her. They used to come, she and her sister taught there as well. And so they would come and join us sometimes for holidays because their family wasn't nearby. So we were emotionally close to them, personally close, not just, teachers and students, but, she had become a little bit of our family. And so I think they felt very betrayed. And it also so happened that the student involved was the son of one of my dad's colleagues. It was just like a whole thing. So yeah, drama ensued. But anyways, I'm trying to like keep things this is not vague, but I don't think there's anything. I've tried to look up all of this like on the internet, and there was nothing ever that, came out public or newspaper. It was very hush hush. So because rightfully, the kid that was involved, his parents wanted to protect him, and so I don't think they ended up pressing charges. But because of this kind of schism that happened, half of the parents pulled their kids out of the program entirely, the school entirely, and including about 5 or 6 of my close friends that were in and around my year. We were all kind of in the advanced couple top levels. Right. So that was like, wow, a huge blow to just everything. I had not made it into P&B. I had, first big drama I had experienced in my little life, and the town was, pretty small. And so, yeah. Needless to say, we were all devastated, but the parents were like, you know what? We still want our kids to dance. They love to dance. They need a place to go. What should we do? So they put their heads together and put some money together, and they decided to start another dance studio in town, in our little tiny town. We're like, okay. So they found a place a room to rent that we could put Marley floor down above a restaurant downtown. And they, hired back the old retired dance teacher, Miss Christine, and another woman, Annalisa, who's wonderful, to come and teach kind of, I think she was teaching jazz and modern, and then Christine taught the ballet and point. And then some of us older girls would teach some of the younger levels. And I also started teaching an adult class for some of the moms. And so we just, we're like, okay, the show must go on. And very quickly, they started to put together, all the adults involved started to put together a ballet for us in the spring, because we were just devastated. So we ended up throwing together this ballet, Snow White. Miss Christine had some old notes and a video of a production she had done in the past. I can't remember specifically, but of some Edvard Grieg music and some of her original choreography. And we had a show. We did Snow White for the June performance, and it was so cool. I'm so grateful to all of those adults that saw us just hurting and wanting to like keep doing this thing that we loved, and we got to do it. It was incredible. It was very cool. It definitely saved my little self from being very sad about this big thing that was this basically like a hole in my heart. You have a mentor who you trust, and then they turn out to not be maybe so trustworthy. That's another story entirely, what I really think about that situation, but we'll save that for another day. So yeah, I ended up finishing up dance. I think, we had some spring performances, a couple more years. And at that point, I knew that my dancing time was kind of coming to an end, I think subconsciously. But at the same time, I had begun to discover another love of an art form that I came to me much more naturally than I think ballet ever has. And that was singing. I started I was very into classical music or like art music. I loved Renee Fleming and Maria Callas, all these great opera singers. Charlotte Church, I love Charlotte Church. Hayley Westenra from New Zealand. I loved their style of singing. And so I had begun emulating them and sort of discovering that I had a really good set of ears, kind of like my dad. So like I said, music runs a lot in my family. And I had, at the time, been going to church a lot. My mom is Catholic, and she kind of raised us in the Catholic Church. And eventually, there were a few snafus at first, but as far as stage fright goes. But eventually, the lady who ran the music at my church, Ms. Barbara, whom I adore, she convinced me to be the cantor for masses, and I just started doing more and more and more. I would sing solo arias. I would lead all of the psalms and the hymns and etc. And I did that with her for about almost 8 years or so, beginning when I was around 14 and 15. It was concurrent with the dance. But yeah, so by the time I was nearing like the end of high school, I guess my last year in high school, my senior year, I also began to take voice lessons because, again, it became very apparent that this was something that I could pursue probably professionally. So I began studying with a professor at our local university where my dad taught, and eventually where I went to school all through my senior year. And I had a leading role in our high school musical. We did Into the Woods. I was Cinderella, which was so fun, one of my favorite experiences. And I was winning all of the singing competitions. We do like NATS, which is National Associations of Teachers of Singing. I would win solo ensemble. I would win anything that I entered into. I was placing. I Actually, I don't even think I ever placed second. I think I was always first, not to toot my own horn, but things were going really well for me. So even though dance kind of fell off, I had a really easy transition into something else that one, was being praised for because I was good at it, but it was a really big confidence boost for me. And after all of that drama with the dance, I think it was really a lifeline. And so I decided to pursue college applications focusing in music performance. And I want to say I started to do an application to Juilliard because at the time I kind of thought that was like the best place to go, even though it's not necessarily true, but they have a wonderful reputation. So, you go to Juilliard, doors can open for you. But I ended up getting bronchitis, I think, or something, or pneumonia. I was always getting walking pneumonia in the winter. And so I had tried to make audition tapes and it just, they were so bad. Maybe I'll post a little bit of those at some point, but I sounded like a little frog. Oh, so bad. And so I ended up just submitting one application to my hometown university, Central Washington University, which at the time happened to have the best music education in the tri-state area of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, maybe even Montana. And so I went to the school in my hometown, which is really cool. And I'm so glad that I did, actually. I think it was really good for me after not really being socialized. I had only 4 years of high school kind of being a young adult. And then, so staying around my home was really cool. I ended up getting my own apartment, I think my freshman year. Downtown, it was little. It was like $500. It was like 1,400 square feet. It was enormous. Oh my gosh, I would kill for that apartment now. It was so cute. But yeah, so I began my college experience in music. And it was so cool to me to all I did my first semester or quarter was take music classes. I don't think I did a general education class until at least my third quarter, my first year, probably more like first quarter of second year. So, but it was fantastic. I got into all these top ensembles. It was really, really cool. It was really cool. I also was given a pretty big part. We had a new director for the kind of opera performance, like the performance aspect of our vocal department. And so she came from New York and had some really amazing credentials. She and her husband came in and they kind of revitalized musical theater and opera in the town, which was cool. But we did opera scenes. And so I was cast as Susanna from Marriage of Figaro. We sang it in English translation, but which was the longest scene in our little production. So I had quite a big part. I think I had like a 25-minute scene, which was so cool, which was so fun. It was amazing to sing on stage in that capacity. I hadn't done too much of that yet in our beautiful new concert hall. What an experience. And then my second year, let's see, what else did we do? I'm going to forget everything, but we also did A Little Night Music, which is a Sondheim production. I was the Countess, which was kind of the antithesis of every role I had ever gotten. And then I think my junior year of college, I had, the summer theater. We had like a summer theater, which is community theater and led by pretty much all the professors at the school. It was kind of everybody in the community involved. But we did Pirates of Penzance, and I got to play my childhood dream role of Mabel in Pirates of Penzance. So that was so incredible. And the director, was she the musical director? I think so. But one of a close family friend who I grew up with her sons, her children. But I remember her telling me, she's like, we chose this show because we had you. We knew we could do this show because we had you to play Mabel and you were going to be so strong. And it was probably just one of the highlights of my life, honestly. Amazing to do that and cross it off my bucket list. My 12-year-old self was just screaming when I got the part. It was just absolutely. I think they told me right then and there. I think I did my audition and they're like, yeah, so it's you're Mabel. Oh my God. It was delightful. I'll put together maybe a little montage of some clips of me doing that. Cause I was it's like a totally a completely other life. And I realized a digression from obviously my ballet history, but it's important because this is that was the thing that came right after dance. However, concurrently, as I am wont to do, I was still dancing. I auditioned for our on-campus dance company called Orcus's Dance Company, mostly modern-based, just kind of a little bit of a branch off of style. There wasn't a ballet-specific teacher at the school. I think not my first year, maybe my second year, Gabby came in, but I can't remember. But and I met my very best friend of all my college years, and I still keep in contact with him, and I miss him dearly. I don't know, Terrell, if you're listening, but I love you, and I miss you so much. I think about you all the time. He was the first person who could lift me over his head because he's 6'6", I think. 6'6" or 6'7", I don't know, so tall, just wonderful. And we bonded on the first day. And he was also in the music department. He played the saxophone. We collaborated on a couple of projects in college. And we spent our, kind of our 4 years. I think I skipped a year of work-asses, or maybe 2. I can't remember. But yeah, so I began choreographing a little bit more. I did some more kind of like modern inspired. I had not taken very much modern dance, so it was kind of just like out of my head. It's all very, very ballet based, but I did 3 or 4 pieces over my time there, which I really enjoyed, including a really long one. I did a 12-minute. I did a piece of Rhapsody in Blue, all about a shopping mall or a shopping department, which is cute. I'll dig that out too. It's so fun. And then I also ended up putting together my own production of Duke Ellington's Jazz Nutcracker with the Jazz Band 1, which is a pretty well-renowned group in the jazz band realm from Central Washington. They tour, and the director at the time, he's like, we kind of want some dance. I don't remember how it came about, but I ended up being the one to choreograph it. So the first year we did it, it was kind of small. I just grabbed like 6 friends or 5 friends, including Terrell, and we just did little kind of fun little bits to it. But then the second year, it was like a full-scale production. I think we had 55 people. I wrote little poems in between and had a friend of mine read it on stage. We tried to just make it into more of an evening length work. So the first little bit of the program, first half hour was like Charlie Brown Christmas and some other jazz kind of Christmas holiday standards. And then the second half, we ended up, I think I got it to 40 minutes. I think that's what he asked me to do. He's like, if you can get the Jazz Nutcracker to 40 minutes, we can program this and it'll be an evening length work. And again, maybe my favorite thing I've ever choreographed. It was so fun. I performed in it as well as the Sugar Rum Cherry, and then Terrell was my candy cane. It was delightful. Yeah, so I had some really big wins in dance too. So I was doing that. Unfortunately, the music part of me got really burnt out. Like I said, I nailed some pretty big roles at first, and then I started to become incredibly overwhelmed because nobody had ever told me or taught me how to say no to opportunities. So every time someone would ask me to do something, I would say yes. I remember counting one time between I think I was in 6 or 7 ensembles total, 6 or 7 different groups to be learning music for, including a vocal jazz ensemble. Our chamber choir was our top group. And I counted one quarter, I had 40 pieces of music to learn. And that was including my my voice lesson, my private lessons that I had. And I became very burnt out. And there was also some drama going on with people around me. There was a rumor that got started. So, again, I'm this naive kid. I still don't think I had been kissed yet. I don't know. I was like, I think I was 20, I was like 20, 21. But anyways, some rumors went around that I was like trying to steal somebody's boyfriend when really I was just like, he was being the creep and was like hitting on me even though he had a girlfriend. But for whatever reason, I ended up with all this blame because I would just flirt back because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. Poor Sasha, poor little Sasha, just didn't know. I was just so naive. I was so naive. But anyways, it became a pretty big fun thing for people to do as to talk about me behind my back, to where I would go into like our student lounge and people would be quiet because I know they had just been talking about me. And that pressure really got to me. So I ended up dropping out of one of the main ensembles, the big one, chamber choir. Out of nowhere, I just went to the registrar and I said, I want to take a W on this. They're like, why? Are you okay? I said, I can't do it anymore. I need it. And they did it for me, which really doesn't have any bearing on anything, but it felt like a big deal. And so the director of the choir kind of approached me. He's like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? I tell him everything. I break down in his office. I'm crying my eyes out. Anyways, to make a long story short, I end up rejoining the group. There were some apologies made to me. Yeah, things just got out of hand, and kind of highlighted the importance of communication to me, because if people just had talked to me about it, then I could have been like, what? I had no idea that was what was being interpreted. No, that's not what I meant. I had no chance to explain myself, but eventually became okay. But even so, all the pressure got to me, and I began to look for ways to not have to complete my college degree. I wanted to drop out really badly. I was tired of music, and part of what kind of... and I'm now just realizing the connection here as I'm talking to you, but there was a couple other things that had happened that caused me to feel that way. And So basically, when I got this into my head that I wanted to leave, I started looking for job opportunities. So I began auditioning, and my first audition I went to go do was over at the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle. It was just a season audition, and you'd show up, and it wasn't cattle call because for me, I was a singer who danced, not a dancer who sings. So it's a little more individualized, but you get like 5 seconds to prove that you can sing and not look like a statue while you're doing it. And unfortunately, I wasn't good at that yet, so I bombed that audition. I think I just stood there and sang, probably with no expression on my face because I was just terrified, petrified to audition. I was such a bad auditioner. And I think it really, I was probably still scared. I was probably still thinking about my ballet audition, right? I mean, like I said, that's occurring to me right now. And then after that, I also decided to audition for Disney Cruise Lines. And this is kind of the first thing that this is the first time I'm admitting this, because usually I embellish the story because it makes me feel better about myself and it makes me sound better, which is so sad. So here I am coming clean. This is why this podcast is probably going to be called, I think I'm going to call it Confessions. But I went down to LA, stood in line at this, this was more of a cattle call. We stood outside at this little rented empty studio in Burbank. And I go in there and same thing happens to me. I get in front of this panel of judges and you have 2 seconds. You better be compelling while you're walking in the door. And nobody had prepared me for this. We didn't have audition prep. We had nobody teaching us, at least the year that I was there, my last year, how to audition properly. I had no idea. I don't even think my resume was right. My headshot resume thing, the whole thing was just like, again, wildly unprepared. I was wildly unprepared to be there. And I certainly wasn't used to getting told no. In all the opportunities I had, I would just kind of get them because people knew I could perform. They knew I was great on the stage, but I was a horrible auditioner. So if, you can't prove yourself in those 2 seconds, well, you're never going to get hired. So yeah, I did terribly. I didn't even get called back for the audition. Usually I say, oh, it's because of my boobs or, because, I didn't have the right body type. No, I did terribly. Horribly, absolutely bombed it. Probably was almost crying. And I did. We were staying with my sister at the time in LA and I went back to her house and I spent the rest of the day bawling my eyes out because I felt like I had just lost another dream. Oh, wow. Yeah. Not going to cry. And I didn't know what to do. At that, I remember coming back and going, well, I guess now I have to finish my degree because I have to at least have a bachelor's in something. And so I ended up getting my bachelor's of music in vocal performance. And to segue into graduate school, to kind of wrap this episode up, because this is where we're going to stop part 1 of this exciting drama-filled. We're not even getting to the good part yet, but this is the first part. And it ends with me getting it into my head that I was going to go to graduate school, because obviously more school was definitely what I needed. And I was going to go for teaching. It was something I had kept up doing this whole time. I ended up doing one more ballet with the new studio in my hometown, which had eventually it had changed locations, it had changed hands, ownership, but I ended up performing one last ballet in 2012. It was Beauty and the Beast, which was a whole brand new ballet, the lady who ran the studio and her business partner choreographed it. And I was Beauty. They called me Beauty, but I was Belle. That was the last dance thing that I did. And so my last year, this was my 5th year of undergrad, I was basically doing no music, maybe a little bit here and there, but I did orcheses. I did this ballet. I ran a couple of workshops for kids in my town who didn't like the lady that ran the dance studio. It was a whole big, I was always causing drama, I guess, but I was choreographing, I was teaching. And so I got it in my head that I'm going to go get a degree in teaching. I'm going to get my master's in teaching for dance, because that's what I think I'm really good at. Music bored me at that point. I was just had done kind of everything I wanted to. And since I was a terrible auditioner, I knew I had no future. So I let that go. And that's what I was going to do. I was also incredibly influenced because at the time it was my first boyfriend. I loved him so much, but as first boyfriends go, you end up breaking up. I was kind of crazy. He was kind of not the right fit for me. I was not the right fit for him. It just, we stayed friends, but I stayed very much in love. And for my 5th year, he was graduating. He was a year ahead of me. So he was going on to also go to graduate school in music theory and composition. at the University of Oregon. And of course, the University of Oregon has a dance department. And it was quite a good one. I'm not sure what it's like now, and I got it into my head that I was going to follow him and we were going to be at graduate school together. And like I said, we were still kind of being friendly. We never really stopped hanging out, but his side of it was we were very much platonic, and my side of it was like I was like holding on for dear life to like, no, this has got to work out. It's got to work out. So that was half of my motivation, probably more than that, honestly, was just like trying to continue this relationship and trying to stay in this person's life and trying to like hang on to anything in my life, because so much was just falling out from under me. Kind of everything I did, I was like, what do I do now? So yeah, I will leave it on that cliffhanger, and I'll talk a little bit about my application and audition process for grad school in the next installment of this episode, and the final installment. I think I'm already at like almost an hour now. And I don't know that there's much to cut out. I did a lot better this time re-recording this. I was so annoyed I lost that file. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this kind of story time thing. I won't do too much of this because I know it's rambly, and I tend to like, hopefully you've kept up with my like ADHD offshoots, like tangent. Like there's always a through line, but I'm kind of running across and around it and looping back on my little through line. So thanks for listening. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Keep your ears tuned. I'm probably recording the next section right after this. So I'm going to edit this. I'm going to pop it up on the on Spotify, and you'll be able to follow along with my dance journey in even more detail, because you'll know where I'm coming from. But anyways, please like and share this podcast anytime you like the episode, or you even just copy the link. You don't even have to send it to anybody. Just press the like copy link share button is amazing. That gets it in front of more eyes, or excuse me, more ears, and helps to grow a little bit of the little community, and hopefully, touches other people's lives, and maybe they find some type of relation in my story as well. So that's all I want to do, is inspire and kind of help others not feel alone if they have a similar background or experience to me. So sharing it at all is really amazing. If you do share it on your social media, please tag me. I love to see what you're saying. If you have a favorite episode, or if you just want to chat, feel free to DM me too. I love talking to you guys. I've met a whole bunch of new people this week, and they've told me their stories as well. So keep doing that. I love that. Again, that is at The Long Shot Ballerina over on Instagram. And I will talk to you guys very soon. I hope you have a great rest of your whatever day it is that you are listening. Okay, bye.